I'm Michael Causey, Editor-in-Chief of the Association of Clinical Research Professionals. Thanks for joining us today for our segment, Three Questions With, where we speak with thought leaders in the clinical trial industry, talk to them about the past, present, and the future issues most pressing in clinical trials. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Three Questions. We're here with David Morin. He's a longtime friend of ACRP, frequent contributor to our magazine, Clinical Researcher, been a great source for me on blogs and many other white papers, and I really appreciate his input always. He's the Director of Clinical Research at the Holston Medical Group Sites, and he's also the founder and CEO of Site Optics Software. Dave, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate you helping out again. Well, let's jump in. We're calling this Three Questions, and the first one I want to throw at you is, what do you see as the biggest challenge right now at the site level?
Well, the biggest challenge for me, and we have a number of different locations, it's really about study and staff management.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not very predictable for us year to year or month to month about the change in therapeutic areas, right? We don't know what's coming down the pike necessarily. And so we have to remain adaptable. We have to be flexible and make sure that we can meet the changing demands of research and therapeutic areas. And also when we have downtime, because there is downtime sometimes, how do we manage that? How do we remain productive and keep interest in the group in continuing to support the research department during times that when things wax and wane within research, because there is you're not always busy. Sometimes you run between being too busy and sometimes you're not busy enough.
Right.
So allocation of workloads, site management, staff management, keeping your staff engaged, keeping your investigators engaged in the research, maintaining professionalism, and that means making sure that your investigators are up to date with compliance guidelines and also are very interested and connected to the work that they're doing. Is a big thing. For me, I mean, that's been kind of a big issue for me, is trying to make sure that I don't overwork my coordinators.
Because that leads to burnout.
It can lead to burnout,
and
it sort of depends, because the work that I've done and some of the data that I've had and I've actually published, I have an article that came out in DIA's journal in January that's about harmonizing protocol complexity with resource management and capacity planning. It's kind of a unique article in that way, because the workloads that coordinators have depend on the complexity of each of the projects they're doing, and then the timelines within those projects and the number of potential study participants in each of those studies. So every day for them is different, and so I have found out that if I give too much work to my coordinators in the way we run, which is the coordinators recruit study participants, so they determine their own schedule. So if I give them too many studies to do, then they have less time for recruitment. They sort of self-correct. So what that
you overload the best people too.
You overload the best people,
which is different.
So they're busy, but they're spending a majority of their time doing work that's uncompensated, right? Because we only get compensated as a site when we produce data that comes from study visits and that comes from enrollment. So for us, if I see a decrease in productivity, it could mean that I've given them too much to do.
Interesting.
And so I want to make sure that workloads are balanced out properly. Now, I've also discovered, and just more through logic and also discussion with other sites, that if you have a team approach to research, and that is that you have somebody identifying potential study participants and putting them on a coordinator's workload, scheduling them for the coordinator doesn't have the inherent braking system. So they can add too much workload to the coordinator, right? And that can lead to study errors, and that can lead to coordinator burnout. So it's also so there are issues either way. So failure can be low productivity. That's not good for a site, because that's financially disastrous for them potentially, and it's not good for the sponsor, right? Or it could be that if you overload a coordinator with too much work, that means maybe the investigators got too much on their plate as well. But that can lead to quality issues, that can lead to safety issues with patients, the data may not be good. So that's a whole other issue. And you might have a coordinator who's a really good coordinator, but they get frustrated with what they're doing, and they decide to leave the workforce, which is a disaster.
And again, often chasing out the best performers,
Yeah.
inadvertently. But now, question 2. I've been asking people a lot about their predictions for the future. I'm going to throw you a curveball, though, and I'd
Okay.
like to know what's on your wish list for the future. What's a big item you think the
Yeah.
industry could use going forward?
Ooh. That's I have to think about what's fair to them
Mhm.
and what's fair to us.
I mean, them and us is sites and sponsors.
Sites and sponsors.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly right.
right.
So I mean, one of the things that would help eliminate our concern for the efforts that we do is to have sponsors pay us by the hour,
Mhm.
which is never going to happen, nor should it, because really they're taking risk in doing product development, right? They have risk, and
Sure.
and the way they sort of spread that risk is to make sure that they pay us for data. So that's what they pay us for. So ultimately, we want to have ways of making it easier for us to get research participants onto studies. I don't see that coming down the pike. I really don't. And the
It's
reason
a wish list.
it's a wish list.
Right?
I wish
We
that
have to have a reach.
yeah,
right? A reach
but
goal.
there are changes in study design now that with remote studies, part of that's
Mhm.
happening already in the sense that we have more mobile health technology that's getting endpoint data with patients not necessarily having to be at the site, but they're putting information in a diary, or they're wearing a device, or they have a device on them somehow, and that's getting information. Well, we have to be trained in that. We have to troubleshoot that sometimes, so we have to make sure that we keep up to date with all that information. It's not easy to do that. So it would be nice if sponsors were on a sort of a common platform and tried to work with the sites to determine what type of technology is the easiest for them to use.
A lot of common sense there.
Which
Yeah.
they couldn't.
Question 3. This is 3
Yeah.
questions here,
All right.
and this is ACRP. So I'd like to ask you. You've been an active member and had many roles at ACRP,
Yeah.
including now. I'd love to hear what you think ACRP as an organization and members should maybe be focusing on in 2020.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I know ACRP is very attuned to that. And what I see is really about professional development. Really, first means assessing what is the projected workforce in research right now,
Mhm.
from the research, CRA status and CRCs and investigators. Do we have enough investigators? Do we have enough coordinators?
The answer is
and
probably
monitors?
no right
We
now,
probably
right?
do not,
Yeah.
right? And how are we going to how many do we need, and how are we going to get them into that career position? Hopefully,
Mhm.
where we can have them look at this as a career, and how once they're in that workforce, how do we keep them engaged, energized, interested, motivated, love what they do? Because I've been doing this over 30 years, and I still love coming to work, right? So I mean, and that's good. I have employees, I have coordinators, investigators that have been working with me. I've been at this institution at HMG for over 11 years now, and I have coordinators that were there prior to my arrival and are still there.
That's great.
And they're still very active and
more of that.
interested.
Yeah.
We do, but on the flip side is I have to listen to them, and I have to make sure that and I've actually developed software that helps me manage that. But I want to make sure that I'm not creating a situation of work environment for them that creates issues, frustration, burnout.
We've been speaking with David Morin. He's currently the treasurer at ACRB on the Board of Trustees. He's also the director of clinical research at Holston Medical Group Sites and the founder and CEO of Site Optech Software. Dave, thank you again
Thank
for
you
your
so
time.
much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.